Hey guys, so we are looking at algebraic terminology. So there's a couple words that I need to talk to you about before we start our process, which those four words are variable, constant, coefficient, and terms. So if we're talking about a coefficient, that's the number attached to our variable. So a variable is our letters or symbols to represent what we don't know. So in this case, we're using x as our variable. And the coefficients would be 1, 2, and 3. But here's the thing. I see 2 and 3, but I don't see a 1 attached to an x. Well, the reason that they include 1 is because there's an invisible 1 written right in front of that x. If we multiply x or any number by 1, the number doesn't change. So we're lazy Americans. We don't like to write all this stuff, so we usually just write x instead of 1x. However, for this purpose, I think it's a good idea for us so we remember to go ahead and anytime we see a variable alone, we go ahead and write down that 1 right in front of it. Now, we've taken care of 1, 2, and 3, but over here is a 7, all by itself. That is called the constant. The constant is the number that's either added or subtracted from the variable. It's all by itself. It's not attached to anything. Nothing changes it. So in this case, 7 is all by itself, so that would be our constant. Now, we need to look at what are called terms. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction symbols. So I'm going to put a line through the plus signs. So if I'm looking at this, I've got 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms. So I've got 4 terms in this expression. So when we go down here, we're actually going to go through a bunch of expressions. We're going to count the number of terms. We're going to identify if there is a constant, because there doesn't always have to be a constant. And we're going to identify the coefficients. Now, here's the deal about a coefficient. If there is a variable, there is a coefficient. So you're not typically going to say no coefficient, but you might not always have a constant. So we got to be kind of aware of that situation. So again, I'm going to put a little line through my plus sign because that tells me, okay, I got 8x over here and 4y over here. That means I have 1, 2 terms. Now a constant is a number by itself, not attached to a variable. I don't see one, so I would write none. And my coefficient is that number multiplied by the variable. So it's the one that is attached to it. So I've got 8 and I've got 4. You could write 8 and 4. I just do a comma, make it a little easier. Oh, I see a variable by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and write down that 1 so I don't forget. I'm going to put a line 1, 2. I got 2 terms. I don't see any constant, but here's a little trick. It says 1m minus 3n. So that subtraction sign actually changes the coefficient to a negative. We talked about if we subtract a positive, it's the same as adding a negative. So we've got 1 as a coefficient. We've also got negative 3 as a coefficient. So anytime you see subtraction, make sure either your coefficient or your constant are marked as negative. We've got 4a squared minus 2b plus a. So I have 1, 2, 3 terms. I don't see any number on its own. I see a on its own, but we know a variable needs to have a coefficient. So we're going to write that 1. But there's no constant. And I see 4, negative 2, and 1. 6D plus 2P. Mark it. 1, 2. I don't see any number on its own, but I do see a 6 and a 2 as my coefficients. See if you can do the next two on your own. Remember to pay attention. If there is a number on its own, like 7 or 2 or any number, that's the constant. A coefficient is attached to a variable. All right. Sometimes the terms of an expression can be combined, so we can simplify it, but only like terms can be combined. So here we have 7W plus W. Now a like term is when they have a common variable or a common constant. So if that means that if there's multiple constants, you can always add numbers. That's an easy thing to do. Or if they have a common exponent. So 7W plus W, okay, I have W and W, so I can just add another W to 7W to get 8W. Now here I've got 2x minus 2y plus 2. Now they've all got 2's, but they all have different variables, or it's a constant, so nothing here can be combined. There's nothing alike. I've got 8e minus 3e plus 2e. They've all got e, which means that I can combine them. 8 minus 3 is 5e plus 2e. I end up with 7e. Okay? If you look at this, we're simplifying. We're getting smaller amounts. Now, in this case, we couldn't get any smaller than 3. But in 7w plus w, we got down to 1. In 8e minus 3e plus 2e, we got down to 1 from 3 terms. And over here, 5d plus 25g can't combine anything, so it stays that way. So you could go from 5 terms to 2 terms. You could go all the way from 7 terms to 1 term. It just kind of depends on making sure you're only combining those like terms. Now here's a tricky one. If I wrote down x squared plus x, a lot of people would try to say, yeah, I can combine those two. The problem is that exponent. That exponent changes x completely. So if we want to think of this as like apples and oranges or shapes even, x squared would be like a triangle. X would be a square. If I try and put a square in a triangle hole, it's not going to fit. They're not the same. So that exponent makes a huge difference. You can't combine those terms. All right? It makes them super different. Now, if it was x squared plus x squared, then you can combine those terms because they have the same exponent. All right? Flip over your notes. Let's talk about some expressions and how to write them. Now, here's the deal. We've got all sorts of words that mean all sorts of stuff. But there is some specific words that mean addition or subtraction, division or multiplication. With addition, things like if I say increase or sum, those kinds of words mean that I'm going to be adding. So if I said the number increased by, number increased by 2, the way that I would write that expression would be x plus 2, or n, or whatever variable you want to use. If I said the sum of a number and 5 plus 1. Now, when it says sum, that is a hint. That's telling you I need the answer to a number in 5. But we can't actually answer that, so that tells us we need parentheses. So if I say x plus 5 plus 1, that's how that would be written. Now going over to subtraction, we've got things like decrease or difference. We've got withdrawal. There's all sorts of words that can mean to take out, to subtract, okay? So if I said, or less. If I said 5 less than a number, I'm going to say, okay, I've got my number, which is I'm going to write as n here, minus 5. Now, a lot of people would try and say 5 minus n because that 5 is written first in the problem. But if I say 5 less than, I know that I need to be 5 less, which means I'm subtracting that 5. All right? Division. Big one with division is the word quotient. It can also say divided. There's all sorts of words like that. But if it says like the quotient of a number and 2, the thing that comes first, if it says the quotient of or the quotient of, whatever comes after of is going to be on top, or it's going to be the first thing. So there's 2 ways I could write this. I could write this as x over 2, like we do with fractions, or x divided by, with this division sign, okay? And then product. Multiply has a couple words like product, twice, which means you're multiplying by 2, and times. So if I'm looking at those things, then I know, okay, I'm going to be multiplying. So if I said twice a number, then I would write 2x. A big one would be if I said 3 times the sum of 2 and 5, I would write 3 with parentheses, because that word sum, that's a big one, 2 plus 5. All right. This will help you a lot on your homework, so I would keep this nearby. Let's really quick, here is your homework. I'd like you to do this page first. This page, you are just going to go through. You're going to say, okay, number of terms. That's where we count. Okay, I've got 3x and I've got plus 2. I've got 2 terms. My constant, that's the number on its own. So that number is 2. And then 3x, that we're going to coefficients. The number attached to the variable is 3. And so that's my coefficient. Now you might have multiple coefficients. You might have no constants. Please make sure if you see a variable by itself to mark that invisible 1. Like, go through and do that now. That'll help you make sure you don't miss anything, okay? Also pay attention to the subtraction and the negatives. If I'm subtracting, my coefficient is a negative. Be careful about that, otherwise you're going to get something wrong. On your homework, you've got these 3 things that say like terms. You're going through and you're saying, okay, let's see, what are like terms? I've got 6a, is there anything the same? I've got a, and I've got 17a. So I would write 6a, a, 17a. Let's see, is there any other like terms? Oh, I've got b and 4b. All right, so that's the other like terms. There's got to be a couple others. Well, here I've got some constants. So I've got 17 and I've got 32. Okay, so that's my list of like terms, and you're doing this for all of them. Please make sure to pay attention to your exponents and do not combine different exponents. That would be very sad. On the back here, you'll get to where it says one term is not like any other term. That means there's one that doesn't have a like term. That's where you write that one. On the bottom, that's where we're working from the back of our notes. Those will help you. You're working on all of these. So this is due the next time I see you. Please, please, please make sure your name is on it. I can't wait to see you guys again. Bye.